Hello, my name's James Patterson and welcome to this video tutorial. I'm going to show you how to create this image here using a variety of different selection techniques. So I have several start images here that we'll be using and we'll bring them all together to come up with this finished effect. So let's escape out of review mode there in Bridge, then we'll go ahead and open up our selections cutout PSD and our selections bg.jpg. Let's double click on those two to open them into Photoshop. So here we have our girl whom we've cut out using the Refine Edge command and the pen tool, and you can find out about that in our previous two videos. Let's grab the move tool over here in the tools panel, then let's check auto select and show transform controls, and we'll click and drag her up to our selections BG image and down into the image, then release to drop her on top of our background. Then we can use the move tool to position her exactly where we want her. Now we're going to apply 4 different effects. We'll make some stars, we'll add some bubbles, we'll put in some smoke behind her, and then we'll also create a kind of spattered ink effect. First of all, let's add some stars. So we're going to do so by making a selection of this star you can see on her eye here. So I'm just using Command and Control and plus to zoom in, minus to zoom out, and spacebar to drag around the image. And we're going to make a selection of this star here, then turn that into a brush. So to do so, let's grab the Magic Wand tool over here in the Tools panel. Then let's zoom in a little bit closer, and we'll just click over the area of the star here to begin our selection of it. I could then hold Shift, and you can see on my icon here, my Magic Wand icon, I get a little plus sign appear next to it. If I hold Alt, I get a little minus sign, look. So if we hold Shift, we'll get the plus sign, Alt for the minus sign. And these icons appear on any of our selection tools and allow us to add or subtract from our selection. So let's hold Shift to get the plus sign, then we can click over the rest of our star here to select it. You can see I've also selected this area here, which I'm not after, so I'm going to bring the tolerance of my Magic Wand tool down to about 15, and then let's hold Alt, which brings up my minus icon. Then I can subtract from that selection, so I can continue clicking around this area to subtract all of these parts from our selection, just like this. When you have all these little bitty areas of your selection here, you can switch to the lasso tool, and again I can simply hold Alt and drag around those areas to deselect them. Let's go back to my Magic Wand tool. Let's zoom in a little bit closer, and let's hold Shift again and continue adding to that selection. I don't want a perfect star, that looks fine to me. So next let's define this selection as a brush. So we can do that by going to Edit and define brush preset. Let's give it a name, we'll call it star. Let's hit OK to apply that. And then if we select our brush tool here in the tools panel, then go up to the brush preset picker, you can see that our star is selectable among the list of brushes here. And then let's click on the create new layer icon here in the layers panel. Let's hit Command or Control and D to deselect our selection there. And then we can select a color for our brush. Let's choose something similar to the color we have here, but maybe make it a bit more colorful like this. And then we can click to draw exactly the same shape as we've made with our selection there. Let's just undo those. And you might think that the selected star is pretty rough looking around the edges, but that actually works really well for this effect. Let's zoom out slightly by pressing Command and Control and minus, and then we'll click on the toggle brush panel icon here in the options bar, and here we can set various characteristics for our brush. So if we highlight the shape dynamics here, we can move the size jitter, we'll bring it up to about 70%. And then let's bring the angle jitter up as well to about 50%. Then let's check scattering, and we can bring the scattering up something around about 260%. I'm just judging these sliders based on the preview area we see here at the bottom of the panel. Now I'm also going to check color dynamics, and we'll bring the foreground background jitter up to about 60% as well. For this to work, I need to select a background color. So I'm going to click on my background color here and we'll choose a nice blue here, sample from the eye makeup again. Let's hit OK to apply that. And then let's dock my brush panel over here with my layers. In fact, let's dock them both up here with my paths. Okay, so now let's start to draw some of our stars. If we click back on our layers panel, let's make sure we're working on the empty layer that we created a few moments ago. And then let's zoom out slightly. And you can see if I begin to paint with my brush tool, I can very quickly build up this effect using those settings that we applied in the brushes panel. You can maybe resize your brush for a few larger stars if you like. Kind of draw, if you swipe quickly, you'll get kind of a different effect. You can see how very quickly we've created that cool but random effect with those stars. And of course, as we're working on a separate layer here, we can click on our move tool here, and then if we click on the bounding box here, we'll enter our transform mode. We can then right click and go to warp, and I can use the warp controls to just mess with the shape of my stars a little bit more if I like. Let's hit enter to apply that. And we can add more stars if we like, just by going back to our brush and then selecting the star again. We also need to save the brush if we want to go back and use it at a later point. We could do that by clicking on the player icon here in the brush preset picker, and then if we go to the preset manager, then we can highlight our brush and go to save set, and we'll call it star. You can see I have one I made earlier here. If we click save, let's replace that one. And then let's hit done to apply that. And that's our star effect finished. Next we'll add a light streak effect, which is a very simple technique. We'll start by clicking the add new layer icon here in the layers panel. Let's give this layer a name, we'll call it streak. And then we'll use the polygonal lasso tool for this technique. Now I can use the polygonal lasso tool just to give me a really simple shape. I'm only really interested in one straight line, which is this section here. I can then grab the brush tool, and we're just going to use a simple soft edge circular brush with our foreground color set to white. And then let's just use the bracket keys to resize our brush. I want a very large brush that kind of only slightly overlaps my selected area, just like this. I can then just click once, and you can see if I deselect by pressing Command or Control and D, I have this cool looking shape that kind of looks like a streak of light. I can use the transform controls to resize it just by moving the corners of my bounding box here. And then I can also press Command or Control and J to duplicate it, and then let's move my duplicated layer over to the side slightly. So you can see I can build up this really cool effect. I can also press Command and Control and J again to duplicate the layer again, and then I can rotate it so I get this kind of crosshatch effect. Let's hit Command and Control and J again, and then just finish off my crosshatch like this. And I'm quite happy with how that's looking, so I'm going to hold Shift and click on my original streak layer here in my layers panel to highlight all of those layers, then hit Command or Control and E to merge them all into one. And then once I have that layer defined like this, I can hit Command or Control and J again to give me different copies, which I can then, if I hold Shift, I can resize in proportion from the corner of my bounding box here, and I can just make different layers like this, position them in different places to build up this effect for kind of a cool streaked light effect in the background. And let's just press Command and Control and 0 to zoom out and see how that's looking. And I think we could do with a couple more, so let's duplicate our layer again and move this layer over here. I'm holding Shift and Alt to resize from the midpoint of my layer, so that just helps me out when positioning these different elements. And of course the beauty of working on different layers is I can always reduce the opacity to lessen the effect here and there. Just bring the opacity down over here as well. And maybe a couple more. Let's put one over here as well, nice and small. So really with all of these effects that we're creating, we'll make the original and then use it in different ways around the image. And this allows us to build up the overall effect really quickly. And before we go any further, I'm going to click on the icon here in my layers panel to create a group, which will then put all of these light streaks in. So let's just call it streaks. And then I'm going to hold Command or Control and click on all of these layers and then drag them into my group. And this way I can just tidy them all away. And I just want to reuse one of my streak layers a final time. Let's change my auto select group up here to layer, and this allows me to click on layers within my group. Let's just hit Command and Control and J to duplicate that streak there. I'm going to move it behind my girl layer here, and then I'm going to resize it quite dramatically, something like that. Then I'm going to change the blend mode to subtract to give me this kind of nice graphic effect on the background. Let's maybe move it slightly somewhere about there. I think will look good. Okay, so next we're going to create an ink spattered effect that will mask the body of the girl. So we'll do so by going back into Bridge and opening our Selections Ink JPEG into Photoshop, and we need to be able to access the Channels panel, which we can do by going to Window and Channels. And let's dock it over here with our other panels. And I want to be able to load the luminosity of the image as a selection, which is very simple to do. Just press Command or Control, hold that, and then click on the RGB channel. And you can see that gives me a selection, if I zoom in, of all the highlight areas within the image. So I want to invert that selection so I have the shadow areas. So let's hit Command or Control, Shift and I to invert our selection. And then let's hit Command or Control and C to copy that area. Let's go back to our main image, Command or Control and V to paste that in. Let's go back to our layers and we'll drag our ink layer that we've just created up to the top of our layers stack. Let's not put it in our group, we'll put it right at the top here. Let's double click and we'll call it ink. And let's go ahead and hide that layer for now. Then we'll go back to our Selections Girl layer. Let's hit Command and Control and J to copy it, just so we have an untouched layer underneath that we'll hide, just in case we go wrong and we need to go back to it. Then let's click on the layer mask of this layer. And I'm just going to grab a brush with a black brush. We'll choose a nice soft edge brush. And I'm just going to whiz over this area here just to give me an idea of what we want to get rid of. Just like this. I can then just use my lasso tool if I like to quickly whiz over the rest of this area and hit Alt and Backspace to get rid of it. Then Command and Control and D to deselect. Next, let's go back to our brush tool, and I want to sample a colour from her skin here. So I need to make sure I'm working on the image thumbnail rather than the layer mask thumbnail. So I'm going to click on the image here and then hold Alt and select a tone in the skin here, something like that, a nice mid-tone. Then let's go to my ink layer. I'm going to hold Command or Control and click on that ink layer. And then I want to create a new layer above my ink layer, so I'm going to click on that to highlight it, then go and click on the Create New Layer icon here in the Layers panel. Then let's hold Alt and hit Backspace, and that will fill that new layer with the selection with my colour that we sampled from the skin there. I can then hit Command or Control and D to deselect that, and let's grab my Move tool again, and I'm going to click on the corner here and resize. Then bring this kind of spattered ink down here. Let's zoom in a little bit. So there we have the kind of start of our effect. I can then hit Command and Control and J to duplicate that layer. Let's resize slightly and angle slightly differently over here. Let's duplicate again. Make it slightly larger this time. And again. And bring over this way. So you can see I can quickly build up this effect. We can also apply a similar effect to the layer mask of our cutout girl. So to do so, we'll highlight our ink layer. Let's make it active. Then we'll resize it over here. Let's zoom out slightly. And we'll just rotate it around this way. Get it kind of positioned over an area of the chest here that we want to mask. Let's zoom in. And then if I hold Command or Control and click on that ink layer, and then click on the layer mask of my Selections Girl copy layer, then hold Alt and Backspace to fill that selection with my foreground color, which is black, and that will hide that part of my layer mask. And then let's turn off my ink layer and hit Command and Control and D to deselect, and you can see how that's building up the effect. So I not only get this kind of spattered ink coming away, I also get a similar effect coming into the girl. So I'm just going to pause the video now while I continue to build up this spattered effect, and I'll come back to you when it's complete. So here you can see my finished ink spatter effect, and you may have also noticed that I've grouped all of my ink layers together into another layer group, and let's just flick that layer on and off and you can see how that's working. Next we'll add some smoke, and we can do this from an image I have here in Bridge called Selection Smoke. We'll open this into Photoshop, and we want to isolate the smoke from the background. We're going to do this using the Color Range command, which you can find in Select Color Range. And here I can sample different colors from within my image. So let's sample a yellow here, and you can see it gives me a display of all of the area that I'm selecting. I can then click on the middle eyedropper here to add to that selection, so I can continue clicking around the image to add more colors into my selected area. I can also adjust the fuzziness to fine-tune the selection like this. So I think somewhere around 97 looks good. Let's hit OK to apply that, and there's my selection. I'm then going to hit Command and Control and C to copy it, go back to my original image, Command and Control and V to paste it in. And that smoke's actually looking pretty good where I've dropped it in there behind my girl layer. I'm going to resize it slightly, just holding Shift and Alt as I resize to resize from my midpoint. And then let's hit Command and Control and J, and we can use duplicates of this layer just as we did with our other effects to build up the smoke around the different areas within the image. Let's just maybe rotate this, have this coming in here like this. Let's duplicate again and have a third layer maybe coming in from this angle down here. We can also, while in transform mode, go to warp after right clicking, and then we can just mess with the shape of our layers a little bit like that. Let's just do the same with this layer. Let's go to warp, just hide that pinkiness, so it's just poking out there. Next we're going to create some bubbles, which will be our final effect. We'll do this in a similar way to the stars we created earlier, so we'll define them as a brush preset. This time we're going to use a new document, so let's go to File, New, and let's just choose a preset size. Any size will do. Then let's click on the elliptical marquee tool, which you can find behind the rectangular marquee tool in the tools panel there, and we want a kind of neutral grey colour for our background, so let's click on our colours here. We'll choose a grey and then hold Alt and hit Backspace to fill our document with our foreground colour. Then let's hold Shift and drag with our elliptical marquee tool to form a circle like this. Let's click on the Create New Layer icon here in the Layers panel, and then let's hit D to reset our colours and X to flip them so we have white as our foreground this time. Then Alt and Backspace again to fill our circle with our foreground colour. Let's hit Command or Control and D to deselect that, and then we're going to create the effect of a bubble by using different layer styles. So let's click on the layer style icon here in the layers panel, and let's just go to blending options. So first of all, let's bring the fill opacity down to 0, and this means we can hide all the pixel information on that layer but still apply our layer styles to it. So we'll apply a drop shadow, and let's just have distance 5, size 5, and a nice dark color, and inner shadow with the same settings, distance 5, size 5, with black as our color with the blend mode set to multiply. And then let's choose inner glow, and let's select white as our color, and bring the size slider right up until we get a nice amount of inner glow that kind of suggests the shape to our bubble. Something about 158, that looks good. Let's hit OK to apply that. Then let's click on the create new layer icon here in the layers panel, and we'll use the brush tool with white as our foreground color. Just going to very quickly paint a shape that suggests a reflected area in the bubble. Doesn't need to be too good, something like that looks fine. Then let's grab the move tool, let's click on the corner of the bounding box, then right click and go to warp. I'm just going to warp this shape slightly so it looks more kind of circular. Let's hit enter to apply that, and we'll also just lower the opacity of this layer so that it kind of fits in with the rest of the colours. Let's just drag to the right slightly, that looks good. Now to define this as a brush we need a perfectly black background, so let's click the background, then hold Control and hit backspace to fill it with black, which is our background colour. Then let's go to Layer and Flatten Image. Then let's hold Command or Control and hit I, and that will invert our colours. Now we can make a selection of our bubble area just using the rectangular marquee tool like this, then go to Edit and Define Brush Preset. Let's call it Bubble. Let's hit OK, and then if we grab our brush tool and go to our brush preset picker, you can see our bubble has appeared amongst our list of brushes. Next, let's go back to our main image, and we can use the brush tool and select our bubble brush, and then we can change the settings in the brushes panel to help us out. Let's go to shape dynamics, and we'll set the size jit up to about 80%. Make sure all the other sliders are set at 0. Let's go to scattering, and we can bring scattering up to wherever we like it, somewhere about 900 looks good. And then let's go back to our layers panel. We want to create a new layer for our bubbles, so let's click the new layer icon here. Let's rename it Bubbles. And then we'll use the bracket keys to resize our brush. Let's choose a color, so maybe a nice kind of pastel blue would look good. And then let's just simply paint around the image like this, resizing our brush as we go. And you can see I can build up these bubble effects very quickly using that brush. And if you have bubbles that stray into areas where you don't want them, you simply need to add a layer mask and then paint over that area. Let's choose a normal size brush, and let's just hide those bubbles around there. So that's almost our finished image. I think maybe the only thing left to do is to make some adjustments. So let's click on the adjustment layer icon, we'll choose curves, and let's just bring our adjustments over here and hide all of these. Then we'll draw an S-shaped curve just to increase the contrast and boost the colours slightly. Just like that. And I also maybe want to just boost the colours in the background, so I'm going to click on the background and add another curves layer above it, just to boost those colours in the background there, like that. And there we have it, that's the finished image. Thanks very much for watching.